Chats with Frank Palmer, the marketing, media, and communications talk show. With Noel O'Dea. Thank you to all our sponsors.
Well, today I have the pleasure of talking with Noel O'Dea, or some of you may know him as Randy. And we're going to get to that Randy part a little bit later. But Noel, good morning.
Well, good afternoon.
Yes, it is a good afternoon there. What's it, about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon?
3 o'clock, yeah.
Yeah. Well, what we're going to do is I'm going to do a short introduction about you and your agency. And after that, we're going to get into some of the questions. Does that work for you?
Well, I don't think I've got a choice, Frank. You're the guy with the, the on button. Of course.
On button, right. Okay. Well, I've known you probably now for, I don't know, 30 years or more.
Yeah. As a young boy.
And while we don't often get the chance to meet in person, whenever we did, I know we'd always enjoy each other's company, like long lost friends. And at the same time, we enjoyed the occasional pint or two, had a little bit of fun. But as the story goes, from what I've been reading about, is that you were born in Toronto, and some people, or most, think that you were born in Newfoundland or Newfoundland. How do you pronounce it properly?
Understand?
No, Newfoundland or
Understand?
Okay. But he was kidnapped by gypsies, and at an early age ended up in St. John's. And I'm going to ask Noel about the real facts about that as we move along. But Noel is really one of a kind. He's a film director. He's a writer, an art director. But beyond that, he's really a wonderful, wonderful storyteller. In fact, he may even be the godfather of storytelling in Canada. He really is kind of like the Great Gatsby, the F. Scott Fitzgerald, Ernest Hemingway, or even Harry Potter's J.K. Rowling. But I'm sure that if most of you that know Roll and what he's accomplished, is that you'll know that he's probably one of the very best storytellers out there. His clients would say that he's very unique, dynamically creative, and multi-talented. One client said, Randy, his overflowing creativity and larger than life, and his sense of humor makes him a gem. He pushes creative boundaries and breaks through them with an end product that shines every single time. I will tell you a little bit later about some of his creative achievements, but Noel's company, Target Marketing and Communications, Inc., is uniquely in St. John's, Newfoundland. His company culture is so important to him. It's all about being informal and operating in a very collegial atmosphere that encourages the creativity for the company's success. Noel says that his work is based on collaboration and a warm shared culture. From all the creative awards that Target has been enjoyed, it's obviously working and working very well. So good morning and welcome to the NABS Ad Chats.
Well, thanks very much, Frank. I'm going to have to move my MacBook back because my head has just gotten a little larger. I think I'm out of frame here on the camera left.
No, but I really mean what I say, and I know you do, and I'm not trying to make your head swell. It's just the fact is that you're well known for the work that you do. In fact, in one of the commercials or one of the interviews I did, we'll get to that later, I've had one of Chris Staples even said the work that you do is fantastic. So our conversation today is about 45 minutes, maybe a little longer. And its purpose is obviously to raise NABS awareness for their support line. And you and the other speakers obviously are the right ones to help us do that, because we are in a situation where we need NABS support. So are you ready to begin?
Ready to go, Frank.
All right. Hopefully
no
today
practical jokes, Frank. No practical jokes.
No, I promise. Well, you never know. You never know. Well, Hopefully we're going to find out some of that secret sauce that you obviously have out there from the other end of where we are in Canada. You're over there and I'm over here.
Yeah.
Where does the name Randy come from?
Well, it was an adjective frequently used in the 16th and 17th century regarding, oh, you mean for me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I have no idea.
You'd have no
Okay,
idea.
it's not
what.
a descriptor.
No, but you have the nickname Randy, I take it.
No, I know lots of Randys and Randy Diplock, but I've never actually adopted his persona.
Oh, well, I've read that in some articles that people call you Randy. So maybe those articles are all wrong. So where were you born?
As a young boy in my mother's bedroom.
What city?
Well, Frank, I know you mentioned I was born in Scarborough, and most people would say that most people in Toronto are really Newfoundlanders who ran out of money on the way to Alberta. But no, I wasn't born in Scarborough. I was born in Newfoundland in a fishing village called Renews.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So you weren't kidnapped by gypsies?
That was later.
Do you come from a family of storytellers?
Frank, life is storytelling, isn't it? Yeah,
I know that, but not everybody can tell that story well like you can.
I mean, I think people. I mean, there are a lot of great storytellers. There's certainly a lot of great storytellers in Newfoundland. Obviously, storytelling was the main form of, recreation for people, I guess. I'm not sure about that. But no, my family wasn't any more storytellers than anybody else's that I know of. But I mean, storytelling is, you're a great storyteller, Frank.
Well, I was just wondering whether you got your skill set from your mom or your dad or family members.
No, I never really thought about it in that in those terms, but it's all around me. I grew up with people always telling stories, making stuff up out of nothing, finding a way to weave one sentence into 10-minute, shaggy dog story of some kind. I don't know. But I mean, Frank, this morning, apparently somebody saw God walking around downtown St. John's. And so they went up to God and said, what are you doing here? And she said, I'm working from home. So,
she said, is that what you said? She said?
She said, yeah, she said that she was working from home. So I don't know where these stories come from, right? They're all around us, I think,
I agree. I just think that some people can tell it a little bit better, and they do, and that's why some awards are given out because of those stories that are told better. Yeah. Did you know you wanted to get into the advertising business or marketing at an early age in your life, or how did that happen?
I didn't know there was such a thing. Really? Yeah.
No, you didn't.
I mean, creative. I mean, creativity is, well, in Newfoundland, which I can only speak to in terms of growing up, although I've lived in many different parts of the world. I was surrounded always by creativity and ingenuity. I mean, people who could do amazing things to solve problems, and people who were able to weave long, entertaining stories around matters of truth, idioms even, but it just seemed to come natural. I'm not sure where that kind of came from. It's kind of natural. It's like your practical jokes and your sense of humor, right? I mean,
it comes to me.
I didn't go to school for it.
It usually comes to me in a moment like that when I can seize the opportunity to play a joke on someone, and it usually does. And I'm waiting for one from you right now to play one on me. But did you go to school or college in order to hone your skills?
No, I can't say that. I didn't. I mean, no, I didn't go to film school or, the wonderful programs at places like Humber and other schools that are available now. It just was always a natural thing to read and to write and to tell stories and to, to find creative ways of expressing yourself visually or in film or photography, just like I guess most people, do. And it just was a natural draw. I just kind of, it happened. I never ever planned a career I've had a number of careers, but I've never planned a career in advertising. It just kind of happened. I know that may sound serendipitous, if I was, if I was with Boston Consulting Group, then, or you were, you would be saying, so now what was your master plan? What were the best practices that you followed? And what were the milestones you had stepped out like for along your career to achieve your goal? And I have to say that, hate to disappoint you, but things just kind of happen. And so it's never really seemed like an effort or work, really.
What was your first job?
Cutting out cod tongues.
Cutting out
cod tongues.
Really?
Yeah, which you've had. You've eaten cod tongues.
My very first job was working for a television station and actually doing some of the cells for the Beatles. Okay. That was a long time ago when you had to paint the cells all by hand.
I remember, yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah. I saw it on the History Channel.
And I had to do that. And I thought I was living in the best part of my life. And
yeah,
I was going to head and go somewhere, but it turned out that didn't work out quite well. But I ended up getting into the printing business too. And so how did that work out for you? Where did you go from there? I mean,
well, I was only 8, so I wasn't sure how far back you wanted me to go. So I went to, did an undergraduate degree and graduate degree. And along the way, I had another life, which was more of a creative life. And so when I graduated from Queens, it ended up going in becoming a product manager and a new product manager, wow. and which was amazing to be able to create things and to shape messaging around products and learn not to tell a lie, but to find a way to stand out and be differentiated. And what I found is that I loved spending time with the agency, and I was always encouraging the agency, which was a small agency in Toronto. And Ken Burt was the account manager, director, senior guy there, and trying to encourage them to get away from the checklists and let's use humanity and storytelling rather than checklists in the advertising, because I had limited opportunity to shape, and I was a young guy, and I didn't have 40 years or 30 or 20 years experience. So I was probably a meddler, but I was probably more of a meddler trying to encourage rather than be dogmatic and give orders of, which happens sometimes you might have experienced with young product managers and supervisors and stuff. So that just was a lot more interesting than, although I love the planning side, because without that, then is art without, creative without strategy is called art. Is that the word? So I don't know, it unfolded, Frank.
No, but I think when you're talking about that, is that some of the best advertising comes just from an instinct and not the research that goes behind it, because it's like somebody wants to protect their job by doing all the research, and if it fails, they say the research.
Yeah,
it was the research. And I go, no, it's not the research. It's because you didn't take a chance, and too seldom today that doesn't happen as much as it should. Who gives you your inspiration? Do your staff give you inspiration, people around you, or who do you have as mentors?
But Frank, like just going back, I don't know when this entered our vocabulary, but you might remember. But there's a phrase called best practices. Now, where did that come from? That term, right? When did that start? Was that the consultancies kind of saying, hey, we survey the world and we look at successful companies? Was that Lubby's book? Because I'm triggered here by what you said before you were asking me a question about people checklists. Where did that word best practices come from? And doesn't that mean if everybody followed, identified, read the books and visited the seminars of here's the best practices for creating advertising for packaged goods or for our beverages or for certain services or telecom or for marketing or retailing or pricing or whatever it is. And if everybody followed all those best practices, Frank, wouldn't it be that everybody would be doing the same thing?
Absolutely.
So where, and where does differentiation come out of best practices? I thought it was, you just triggered something, which was best practices. What you want to do is figure out what they are and then do something different because everybody else is reading the books and the seminars and getting the consultants in to say, follow the best practices. And, how many times is the product shot in there? How often is the logo? How long the pack shot? It's such the tail wagging the dog of actually getting people's attention and
maybe it
getting
was
into their heart and soul.
Maybe it's just another way for someone to sell more books.
Like and seminars.
And seminars. I mean, I know a lot of people that are doing that right now,
But one of the things I remember about you is that over the years is that you never did what the other guys were doing. I know you were pretty good at figuring out what your competition was doing in the agency business, but you always took an angle that was a little different, and that's been kind of inspiring to me because of the reasons I mentioned. Ubiquity is best practices. Differentiation is following and you're walking, your own, traveling down your own path,
Well, I think that's always the way that you want to be different. If you're not different, you're the same as the crowd. And you said earlier, I'd like to know how you came up with that campaign for the Flat Earth Society. But before I do that, let's just play one of the spots there. It's a 2-minute spot, and you can give us a little background on it. So play that spot here, would you please?
The people from the Flat Earth Society believe that this place is one of the four corners of the world. The very edge of the Earth. Well, that's just foolishness. Isn't it? Newfoundland and Labrador.
What wonderful spot. I really loved a few words that were in it. I thought that maybe that might have been you as the actor when I first started looking at it, but I love the line, the people from the Flat Earth Society believe that this place is one of the four corners of the world, the very edge of Earth. Well, that's just foolishness. That's just foolish, isn't it?
Mhm.
Great words.
Mhm.
It's also read that the Flat Earth Society believes that humanity lives on a disc or flat, and some people think that the Earth is shaped like a diamond. But I really think that what you did with that conspiracy theory is that you turned a diamond into a great advertising campaign.
Well, thanks a lot. Frank, so that spot that you just played, that was the very first spot we created 15 years ago for Newfoundland and Labrador. And it almost got us fired. So it's
What happened?
well, who in their right mind? It's like there's time. I think Yeats had a line something like he had an abiding sense of tragedy, which sustained him through small periods of joy. I mean, it's a fairly dark spot when people first look at it. And so we created that spot almost immediately after we had won the contest for the province, and it didn't have happy faces, and it didn't have a lot of people, it didn't have water slides, it didn't have any of the things that Newfoundland doesn't have. And our whole premise was that we don't want to attract tourists. We want to attract travelers. Tourists know where they're going. They know what the experience is. Travelers don't know where they're going and don't know what to expect. And so the strategy was very, is this too long a story?
No.
So the strategy was to understand sophisticated and frequent travelers who have been all over the world in search of things that are unique and not manufactured in an increasingly plastic world. And so what we were trying to do was to tell a story, warts and all, and to show a mystery and the enigma that is Newfoundland and Labrador. And so it had none of the usual entrapments, and it was a single chapter in the story, whereas most tourism advertising, all tourism advertising at the time, was about how many different constituencies, experiences, products, locations can you fit in that 30-second spot. Whereas when you think about the mindset of somebody who's traveling, and you've traveled a lot, that audience that experienced and sophisticated audience is looking for and interested in stuff that isn't choreographed. So this was a bit of a shock to the industry. When it first ran out, we had the full support of our client in government. They were with bated breath, but they couldn't take it off the air. The industry couldn't get it off the air because everything was bought and it was running, and we needed it in January. So, but by the time April came, we started getting all these calls and from operators, and government kept getting all these calls saying that they were booked up, or they were booking up, and people were calling, the type of people they hadn't really seen before. So we were on that edge, Frank. We were looking over that cliff. We could have had the shortest AOR assignment in tourism and destination branding history. And fortunately, it worked out. But you mentioned earlier about clients willing, the bond of trust between, people who create advertising and the clients who depend on it for their business advantage and revenue and their life. And so this was a bond where we didn't feel we didn't feel let down or by our client, we were all in this together. We believed in it. And while at the time it was a very, it was, people say, an approach that had never been used before. We just thought it was natural storytelling and it was intriguing and people would want to find out more. And then as they got down to wanting to find out more, of course, we could show them the kinds of things they could, I mean, this inside out. I'm sorry to be boring you here.
No, I think
but
it's
that
a great,
ad's 15 years old, Frank.
I know, but it still works today. And I think that you've had some pretty good copycats. I think I've seen New Zealand and little hints of maybe the similar stuff. And I think that years ago, we in British Columbia did a little thing where we had these moments or clips that were people on the boats and saw, whale jump and it was just different. And,
Wasserman did a campaign years ago. You remember it, I'm sure, which in print advertising with double page spread, like classic CA kind of layout, 3-sided bleed, and at the copy at the bottom, it was a moody shot in a fjord. Oh, I guess it could have been in a Chevy, in a cove or Frank, that was pretty funny.
Well, I know that even in our agency here, one of our creative directors, Craig Redmond, he said, I hear you're doing Noel O'Dea, and he said, pass along. I just love what he's done out there. And one of the questions that would be for me is like, what's it like running an advertising agency from one of the four corners of the earth? I mean,
yeah. Can I got to finish my story, Frank, about
all right,
Alan Wasserman.
I must have, sorry, I interrupted.
And so, double page spread, bleed 3 sides. And it was a pod of killer whales. There was no sunshine. It was kind of in the dark in the fjord. I won't mention Chevy this time. And they were just, back breaching. And the headline below said, some of our favorite visitors return every spring.
Yeah.
And that was a stock shot. That wasn't shot with low budgets in BC. It was a Supernatural BC was the campaign, if you remember. It was a standout, amazingly standout. It influenced me and our guys a lot because it was so unlike most tourism advertising, and it just spoke with an intelligence and a playfulness without all the usual trappings and cliches. Because, like in advertising, isn't it all a cliche? Like whether it's digital or online, or whether it is, on television, everything's a cliche. And you can see the Dartnell handbook checklist of what's supposed to be shoved in there. Like whatever happened to just like speaking intelligently and having a little wink and a little bit of fun and bringing some beauty and not telling people what to think, like laying out the crumbs, and the audience will discover them, bring their own meaning to it, give a feeling of the place. And it was a great campaign. I don't know that whether, Wasserman has gotten enough credit for the influence it's had on, well, at least some people in advertising, destination marketing, and tourism, but
let's hope tourism gets back up and running again soon, because it's been, So what's it like running an agency out there? I mean, it must be difficult in many ways, and maybe it's not. And attracting staff, I would imagine, I would think that maybe I'm going in the wrong direction. I think that maybe when you get them, they want to stay and not leave.
Yeah. Recruiting to, very experienced talent who are also nice people to a completely different piece of geography. I mean, we're closer to Dublin than we are to Minneapolis, is difficult. It's difficult to get people to leave Toronto when they're in their careers, because they are saying, hey, all the advertising in the world is here in Toronto. Like all the multinationals are here. If I want to go to Hong Kong, which I guess that's off the list these days. But if I want to go to any other exotic locations or New York or London or wherever, I've got a lot of opportunity, or their spouse is working. And, you know, we had a wonderful writer in Vancouver who was interested in working with us, and her husband was a highly recognized and successful surgeon. And so it, you know, trying to make that work doesn't work. So it is difficult to attract people. But Frank, we only need it. We drew the line. We went to 50 odd people. And next thing, I was trying to be a manager, and I'm a terrible manager. You know, I would prefer to, you know, I'd prefer to get a kick in the side of the head, you know, if on George Street than to be a manager and have to be so organized and responsible. You know, I like doing the work, and so we made a decision. Do you know a company? Do you know an agency in London? It was called St. Luke's. At one agency.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Right. And that book, when TBWA bought out Chiat Day, and then Omnicom tried to barrel them all together, and they revolted and they started St. Luke's, and they had I forget the three principals who started St. Luke's as but they wrote a book called Creative Company, and they realized something I had realized in you know, in academic life, is that once you get in services around beyond 40 people or so, you end up needing another layer of management. And then all of a sudden, instead of kind of working and writing and creating and solving problems and figuring out what the solutions are, you're spending all of your time managing another layer, which is perfectly a good thing to do for people who want to do that and to grow. I'm not knocking it, but for us, we cut back so we don't get more than 40 people. So we don't need a lot of people. We need like good people that are also like really nice. So we have more success recruiting out of South Africa, although Brian Harrod was already here, so we weren't able to hire him back in the day, or Ian Merlin, you know, but and out of London and Scotland, and out of New Zealand, and a little bit out of Australia. And so, which is great to get, you know, people from many different cultures coming together, but they've got a similar, you know, sentiment, you know, and cultural bond. So recruiting staff is difficult, but it is so sweet when it works out. So I'm working with people now that, you know, are, you know, Tom Murphy and I, Tom was creative director, worked for 30 years before he retired last year, and he's back here because he misses it. He's actually out on a tourism television shoot as I'm talking to you, and so just back because he loves it. And Gay Broderick was 31 years our HR director, and then we have people just out of Humber, people just out of other creative colleges, people with 2 and 3 years experience. So we don't go chasing business and then figure out how to staff it, which is because we don't have the pressures of multinationals. And you and I have chatted about that a number of times for beverages and without beverages. But so, yeah, it is tough to get people. But when people come, I mean, so of course, our appeal is that within Canada is we're an overseas agency.
Well, I think you've given some of us and some of the viewers on this who are going to watch later some of your special sauce.
Yeah.
You've over the years have had some really, really important clients here: Canada, Molson Canadian, Unilever, Irving Oil, Rogers Communications, just to name a few. And a lot of that work, how did they come to you?
Frank, you know, I realize that you're going to end up having a nickname for me when in the future, because you said, how did you get into advertising? And I said, well, in essence, what I said, it was serendipity. We do not have anybody. We don't. Oh, I don't mind. But we don't have anybody out knocking on doors. This is such a lousy, this is not a good business practice. This is not, what do you call it there? Best practices, Frank. We don't have anybody in charge of new business. Like, people come to us, they say, I saw this work for Irving or for, you know, a brand, a Maple Leaf brand or something, or what you did in branding for, you know, Tango and Zip and Jazz for Canada. or something, or your new, we were just having had a lot of fun with a cannabis branding from the ground up with a brand called Crooked Dory, and which is #1 SKU right now. If I can put a punch in for those guys, look it up. And Naked Mummer is that people come knocking on our doors. I think that, you know, what's the idiom there? It's birds of a feather fly together. I think people of like mind somehow in the universe find a way to attract to each other, right? And based on the sensibility, like we get people calling saying, well, I really like the sense of humanity in your work. And to me, I wish I had written that line and put it in an ad for Target, because we hate doing, we don't want to do, we avoid doing anything that's shrill. We hate asking for our client's brand, buy us today, asking for the order. We think our job is to not to be a declaration, you know, off the brief set in nice type and colors. We think we're laying out crumbs that people will pick up and they'll lead to the conclusion. So that sounds very serendipity. So clients, I mean, come to us and it's, God, now that I'm telling you about this, don't you go like stealing our strategy, Frank.
Oh, well, listen, I want to move to one of your spots that you did for Labrador, Newfoundland and Labrador, and this is the spot of the clothesline. Could you play that one for us?
Oh.
All of a sudden, you're 9 again. And then it hits you. You're way more fun than you remember. Welcome to Iceberg Alley, Newfoundland and Labrador.
That is one of my favorite spots. And when I interviewed Chris Staples, he told me that your commercials actually made him want to travel there. And he said to me, it lived up to its expectations. Pretty good endorsement.
Yeah, I like and respect Chris a lot. So I'm going to have to keep him on my Christmas card list. I can see that, Frank.
But I want to ask you the question, where do you go for a vacation?
Well, I'm a traveler. I do a lot of traveling. You know, well, I've traveled, you know, I've traveled, I won't say almost every place, but I'm a big traveler. But my favorite places for travel, I'm stimulated by everything around me. I do a lot of traveling in Newfoundland and in Labrador, you know, because it's kind of like, who's that? The David Wallace Thomas, he said, he used to tell this story about, there were two young fish traveling along in the river, and they meet coming in the opposite direction, like an adult fish, and the bigger fish says to the two young fish, water's great today, guys, and kept on going. And the two smaller fish, younger fish, kind of moved on, and one turned to the other and saying, what's water? So, you know, I think that if we keep our eyes open, you know, it's like there's beauty and stimulation and interest everywhere. And so it was a roundabout way of answering your question, but it's, I could be happy just about anywhere, just where your curiosity can be evoked, where there's some stimulation and a little bit of sparking of imagination, and just seeing how other people live, how they react, what social relationships are like, you know, between couples. You know, I'm a people watcher, but
Yeah.
Uh,
You said in an article, and you maybe answered this already, that being where you are might actually be a competitive advantage.
Well, I don't want every agency, and all the multinationals to move to St. John's to get that advantage.
You won't
So
have to
please
worry
don't
about
spread
that.
this.
You won't have to worry about that.
I firmly believe that. I realize we are, the most easterly point in North America. We're not in the center of where clients are. What we found is since, one of the upsides from a business point of view with COVID is that clients and staff are, have adapted to working from a distance. We've always adapted working from a distance. And so, it's what we see. It's like around us. It's like, if like in Toronto, I used to hang out a lot at the Pilot Tavern, which I understand is now coming back into being a popular watering hole and social gathering place for advertising and marketing people. And, and I love so many people in advertising, a lot more than, I'd prefer not to be his company to be in. But I love it. So, but if everybody is doing the same thing in the same place and seeing the same stimuli and telling the same stories, then it's very difficult to have great new creative ideas and to do work that's different. So, I like the color of the light on the rocks. I'm working from home today. I didn't get to see God, in downtown St. John's, from earlier there, but the color of the light and the way that little wisps of fog kind of wraps around and kind of, I could wax eloquently, but I won't. Unless you really insist on it, but
well, I have to agree with you on not a lot of agencies may want to move there, and as you know, I've been part of a smaller agency and growing it and having sold it to a larger agency and then leaving that and starting all over again. But it seems to me that there's just a handful of really good agencies in Canada, including yourself, that are independents, like Broken Heart, Love Affair, and 123 West, and Zulu, and No Fixed Address, and Rethink all come to mind. And it seems to me that they're all doing really quite well.
Yeah. I feel, and it's so great to see, it's so great when Taxi first started, when Paul and Jane first came from Montreal and they were small, then, I mean, they were very generous to, I had worked with Paul. Paul was at Cassette before that and on Air Canada, work at Cassette. And so we would get together as a group, but so Taxi became more than an independent. And now Sir Martin's former company, I guess, owns them and stuff. But there's been so much generosity. It's great to see Chris out there and his guys, turning their agency into a non-multinational shop and doing so well at it, and people like Andy McCauley, now Andy moved, lots of agencies, a couple of agencies to be sold out. But I think that if you're, it depends on what you want, isn't it, Frank? What is the outcome? Like, so I love doing the work. I'm not really that interested in growing and making $1 quadrillion so I can do something different. So being independent, I think it just allows you to be to thine own self be true, because you can get by with owning 2% share of the market. You don't need to have 100% share of the market. Sometimes you take these paths, you don't really know, where that path is going. It's just there, and you just keep traveling, like the Johnny Walker Walking TV.
I love that. I love that one.
Wasn't that a great campaign?
Well, I think it was, I don't know how many takes they had to do that commercial, but that one was fantastic. I thought that was seamless. I thought it was seamless. Yeah. Seamless,
and that's life. It's like, I think you gotta, I worked with a guy, a writer, really a Brit, who said one time, he said, "No, he said, I like the fact," he said, "that you're be yourself." He said, because I said, "Well, everybody else is taken, Neil."
Was there any clients that have come to you that you've said no to? You don't have to mention.
Oh, yeah. You gotta do that, because why would you work with somebody that you didn't like or you didn't feel it was going to be respected? And there are certain categories we will never work with. So we've never worked with distilled spirits, but hey, we're doing cannabis and beer. Okay, there's just like a greater intensity to distilled spirits, like a lot of, and we won't do lotteries. I don't care. That is a line in the sand. There are too many families and people that are destroyed by that false dream. And one other, Frank, we don't do nuclear weapons.
Good point.
Yeah,
Good point.
we that's off our list. If they knock on the door and say we've got $1 quadrillion, it doesn't matter. We're not going to do any work for those guys.
I'm going to ask you a bit about creative awards. You've won so many, and one of the only companies that have 11 agencies in Canada to win a gold line in the 55-year history of the Cannes International Advertising, and as well, the only East Coast shop ever to win a gold CASSIE, and now the only East Coast agency ever win a Grand Prix. And that's very impressive. And in 2017, you took home the most wins at the ICE Awards. It's just unbelievable. Chris Staples said he was like to win awards because it gave him notoriety, I suppose, but I guess winning awards is sort of some form of being noticed.
Yeah.
I think that when I tried to build our agency with Chris and Ron Woodall, I was upset that I'd go to these award shows and win nothing.
Yeah.
And I wanted to change that. So how important was that to you,
Well, there's that word, serendipity coming out of my mouth again. I remember we were in Montreal, we were doing a big presentation. Jackie Gale and I and Don were in Montreal making a presentation to an existing client, which had just been swallowed up Gulf Canada East, a company called Ultramar. And finally, somebody got through to me. And actually, Jackie got the call saying, look, they're telling you have to go to Toronto for the marketing awards. And we said, the marketing awards, why? Like, we're going back home tonight, there's beer to be drank. So we went to the marketing awards, and Gary Gray, which is, a great guy, he was chair at the time. I didn't know him. He's such a gracious person afterwards, so helpful and encouraging. And we had won the gold award for campaign we did for Cancer Care Center award. It wasn't like doing billboards for doggies, where, it wasn't anything that we did. We were doing the work because we were trying to help the Cancer Care Center in St. John's, to raise money to get more equipment and facilities. And so we won this gold award, and which was the first award we had ever won. I didn't even know we had entered it.
Wow.
Entered the show. So it was great. We were there, and so it just is a bit of serendipity that it kind of happened, but awards are nice, but you mentioned like gold lines. The first gold line was for convenience store radio, which is, what that category is like, how tough that is with no budget. Irving had 850 convenience store outlets in the U.S. Northeast and in the Maritimes and Quebec, and I didn't even realize Tom had entered it, and so we, so it kind of makes you. But Frank, it makes your mom proud.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you that. I was going to ask you that as one of the last questions. You already stole it from me, but you were inducted into the Marketing Hall of Legends in 2020. And I'm going to play that now because I thought that what you said was very important to the industry. So would you play that now, please?
You've done a lot of research on me, Frank.
I got some other questions coming.
What?
If we don't show in our storytelling by recognizing people who have had a large amount of humanity in their lives and in their persons and in their language and interaction, who also overcame whatever natural and artificial barriers that we have to face in our lives, from young people and young people starting their careers. If we can't inspire those people by showing them themselves in other people, what they could be if they believed in themselves, if they were inspired, if they were tenacious, and if they could feel that I could possibly do that, then we've left our main responsibility in careers in our lives like fall by the wayside. And that's why it's important.
I've got to make a correction. That actually is my evil twin. He was stolen by the gypsies. I know there's a resemblance, but
I know. But I found that the message there was very important, especially for young students coming up in NABs, and hopefully at some point in time, those young students will support NABs more than a lot of the agencies who currently aren't. And you know, for me doing this with you and others, it's important to know that this industry needs help, and those messages coming from you and others really do make a difference. And why people should get into this industry are basically the storytelling that you told today and why. So I have a last couple of questions, and then these are coming from the audience because we do have a small audience. Where do you think the industry is today, and do you think there's still lots of opportunities?
that sounds like a serious question. I mean, advertising, the agency business has always been so I'll answer it in a roundabout direct way, if that's not an oxymoron. But I mean, I think the industry has always been, clients have always been attracted by shiny stuff, you know, like ravens and crows, you know, and they are attracted by the shiny and the new and they forget, I think, that at the center there has to be, I'll say, storytelling and humanity rather than the bling, and the delivery of the message is less important, those tools are, than the core idea and the thinking around the messaging and the brand over time. So I think the industry, you know, should not be allowing itself to get distracted by the bling and the new shiny stuff, technology in particular. Instead, they should stick to the core strength of communicating and getting into people's hearts and minds, and then use the tools. And I mean, all the research that I've been reading about from the AAF, ARF, and especially from the UK, is how advertising over the last 10 years has just been on a downward slope of effectiveness. And if that's the case, then we're going to be overtaken by, you know, the best practices that the large consulting companies have built their business on of, hey, we've, you know, surveyed all the airlines, and this is what we found are the correlators to greatest success and financial returns and, you know, equity value in the marketplace. And so you need to stick to those. Well, that's like the slow descent to the bottom. But you know, we have independents, like look at 123 West in Vancouver. They're actually thinking really innovatively and creatively, like independence. And look at what you and Bobby are trying to do, right? In terms of, and where you're going to be going. Look at even Rethink, which has become very large. I didn't mean to say even Rethink, but it's a large agency. It's actually it's thinking, you know, outside the best practices in a lot of its work. And whether that's from the early days when, you know, the boys started Rethink, that culture still being carried over, I'm not sure, but there is still a streak of independence there. And I'm leaving out a bunch of other agencies. I'm very optimistic about the future. You know, I'm for advertising. I just feel it's important to make sure that we concentrate on the outcomes and not on the inputs, not on the measurement techniques for certain social and digital and online media tools alone. That's the tail wagging the dog. I mean, I would more than 2/3 of all of our media, you know, because we're a, you know, we are a all-in-one shop. including media. At least 2/3 of our media dollars, including for Newfoundland tourism, Newfoundland and Labrador tourism, is in digital and online media.
Yeah.
So I'm not discounting the importance of those delivery tools, but I can tell you that, you know, when big data is, we're relying on big data to, you know, to get the message out and decide what the message is. If we're relying on big data, and for companies to be telling me, as you see every day, is that we understand you. Frank, I don't want anybody to understand me. I don't know of any person, any customer who wants to be understood by a toilet tissue brand or any other product out there. Just leave me alone, get out of my life. Now, I'm not discounting the affinity, you know, and, you know, purpose-driven, the research on purpose-driven, et cetera, you know, and the high correlations in certain segments for companies that express that. But what consumer, what human being wants to be associated with a brand that's an a-hole, right? I mean, but generally we don't have room in our lives to be understood by and to be friends with the tens of thousands of brands out there vying for our attention. I think that it's kind of like, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it's something you said when you were after playing a practical joke on me in my office in St. John's, that reminds me that, you know, the simplest thing at the core is the most important thing of having effective outcomes with your campaign or for your client. And when you lose track of that and the bling becomes what you're focused on, well, God help us all. Hopefully that's where the, you know, hopefully that's where the consultancies are going, Frank. You know, they're following down that best practices road, and we should be doing the opposite. Find that out, what they're at, and then go at a 90-degree angle, right?
Well, I have a feeling you'll be continuing to doing that. My last question for you.
Oh, Frank, it can't end so soon.
Are mom and dad proud of you?
If they were here on Earth, they would probably be proud of me, but they might, yes, they would, because it was unreserved support for whatever I thought would make me not just happy, but to make me feel good about myself. So, and that's one of the reasons why we're pretty fussy about, well, not fussy, I mean, that sounds so precious, about, you know, clients that we work with. I mean, nice people, you know, with good intentions, who trust you and treat you with respect. Not with respect, but at least not with disrespect. Treat you like human beings, and you're a partner, and you know you've got their back, and we've got their back, because we're in it together, right? And so working together, like that's really important. So there are some situations, clients, individuals within companies that are clients, you know, the best job that you could do for them would be to say, we don't have capacity right now, but let me tell you a couple of, if you want, I'll give you a reference to a couple of companies that, you know, you should talk to.
Can I put my hand?
You don't want to be unkind about it.
I'll put my hand up there. Can you help me?
Frank, of course. Just don't ever remove the braided cord from my telephone handset again, and then go to the next office and call me, and I'm up in the air saying hello, 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 and there's no cord.
Well, actually, I have another one that I've done to more people. I put shaving cream. I put shaving cream into the earpiece and then phone them, and of course I phoned them, and I know that I had to stop after I ruined 100 headsets. Noel, this has been a great interview with you. I appreciate your time, and thank you for talking to me on Ad Chaps or Nabs. It's very important, and thank you, and have a great day. I really appreciate it.
I have, Frank, I just want to say two things now. One is that, so when I said at the beginning, Newfoundland, understand Newfoundland. But there's a Simpsons episode. This is the second last thing. There's a Simpsons episode where Homer and Marge are watching the news, early evening, and the news. And a story comes on about New Mexico, something going on in New Mexico. And Homer turns to Marge and says, there's a New Mexico now? And so I was in Europe, Northern Europe, at some sort of, I think I was at a conference and giving a speech or something. And most people there thought that Target was located in Newfoundland, and they wanted to know the geography in relation to Russia on Newfoundland. So for you, understand Newfoundland. That's the easy way to remember.
Thank you.
Now come and visit again.
I will.
Amare.
I plan to
West
do
Coast,
that
East
soon.
Coast.
I plan to do that soon.
Produced by Nabs.